Welcome to Pug TV. This is Jadrian with Pug TV, and tonight my wife's hassling me, but we're here. Tonight though, it's Monday, so this is whatever Monday something June 18th. I was like, I don't even know. I just worked today. I don't even know the day. All right, so we got some cool things going on. I thought was pretty cool. What I'm doing tonight is what I call speculative wargaming. The reason why I call that is because I have set up to demonstrate a game that has not been fully published yet. So everything that you're looking at is stuff that I have found off of the internet, kind of collected together. They're not official game art or anything like that. This is stuff that is still just being planned. So you're going to see like some mismatched stuff. Stuff might not be very clear or crisp. It's simply because I did what I could with the tools that I had. So why would I be doing that? Because I think that this is a phenomenal game system, and I just want to share, what I thought was very, very cool about it, just to help generate some interest for it. So I have it programmed in my game board, so it can't release it because I don't have permission to release it. It's not, something I can actually send anybody who's interested in it, because we're just speculating what the gameplay might be like. So basically what's the game? Is a game called Panzers. Now this is a game that I had to do a little bit of research on. I guess this game came out like in 1979 originally, published by Yakinto Games, I think is how you pronounce that. And they had a couple of expansions. It was like 88, and then I think the other one, I forget what the next one, Armor or something like that. I think it was Armor. So these comprise this really cool game system for tactical wargaming, mostly focusing on armor. Now over the years, there was another iteration of this that came out a little bit later called MBT and IDF. And I had MBT and really liked it. It was a system that made a lot of sense, had all the complexities you could want if you wanted them, or played as simply as you wanted. Very great modular system. And finally, there eventually became some miniature rules for it, and then there became, Panzers, the latest version of it, written by James M. Day, and it's being published by GMT Games. So basically, one thing's led to another, and I was deciding, which do I want? Conflict of Heroes? Do I want fighting formations? And after having spent some time with fighting formations and conflict of heroes, I decided to look at something totally off kilter, and I looked at Panzers. And when I first read the rules, I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. It's like 80 pages. These other games are like 20 pages, and you have like a complete game in the system. But when I got to looking at some of the data cards and things, I said to myself, oh my gosh, this looks so familiar. And that's when I got to digging and realized it's still James Day who did MBT and IDF. Now he's just remaking his system. He says streamlined, still has some complexity, but it is streamlined, but still has a lot of the grit to it that made the other games so fun. And there's been a lot of speculation on the boards and forums that I've read at various websites, speculating how this is going to play, and some folks saying, oh my gosh, it's dumbed down, it's not going to be any good. So I said, well, let me speculate. And I'm a visual person, so I'm going to speculate visually. So the first thing that I really love about the system are data cards. So every vehicle has a data card. So instead of just putting some numbers on a counter and saying that these four numbers represent the vehicle in all its glory, since we are playing at a tactical scale where it's one vehicle to a counter, squad, half squads to a counter, it made sense to say, these vehicles perform under a lot of different conditions. I can't just put 3 or 4 numbers on a counter. So let's take a look at some cards and let's kind of dive into the game. So the first thing I've got here is a map. Now, I didn't realize that maps would be the focal point of discussion and debate. Now, reading some of the information about the game, unboxing, if you will, the first release set Panzers is going to come with like one of those 22-inch by 34-inch map boards. All subject to change since it hasn't actually shipped out yet. I've got my P500 order, which a little disappointed. It got pushed back a month, so I'm waiting. I was really hoping I'd make a kick butt Father's Day present, but that just got pushed back. So I'm hoping that will make a day or two after the 4th of July kick butt package when I get it. So anyway, there are a lot of people are upset that it's going to be a single-sided map. And folks are like, what am I going to do with this map? Once I do a couple missions, we know the map, we're stuck with it. Well, we don't know what it's going to be like. Oh, hey, Puckpin, Eagle Claw. I know, it's not my normal MMO, so people who come in are probably going to be like, why is he doing one of these again? Because it's Monday and I like to. Alright, so that's the first bit of debate that I heard was just on the map. So the expansions are going to have actual cardboard geomorphic maps, so you can align them however you want and they match up, you can make your own terrain. And so now you've got people that are saying, well, that doesn't make any sense, because now how can I use the maps of the expansions with my paper map from the first game? So we'll have to see what they actually stick in the box and how that plays out. I don't think it'll be as bad as folks are thinking, but again, I'm new to wargaming, so I'm being optimistic. So the other thing here is, now that you've got your map you're going to play, you got to have pieces, the stuff, right? So here's the meat. So instead of just your counter, you have these data cards. I'm sure a lot of folks have looked at the data cards, and I know that there's been talk about the data cards and how simplistic they look. So you might be wondering, well, you know, what exactly do you mean by simplistic? What did they look like before? Well, I have not got a chance to see the data cards from the original Panzer game. I've only seen the data cards from here, and I only have, just in a digital format, the data cards from MBT, the Vassal version. So what I'm going to do just real quick like is, oh, Vassal disappeared, here it is. Just real quickly pull up the Vassal MBT game real fast. So here in the background, I'm going to share this with you real quick like. Just for a comparison here. I know, there's nothing to see. I was hoping it would share it, but it's not. So what I'm going to do is come over here. It's arguing with me. Stop arguing. Alright, so let's see here. I might be able to make this a little bit bigger for you to see. Alright, let's move this over. Okay, so here's an example of what a data card looks like from the MBT series. And this is what I fell in love with years ago. This is before at the first Gulf War. This is back when, you know, people were speculating war between Russia and, you know, Soviet Union and America, Eisenbach Gap, and all that really cool fun stuff. So we had M1s. M1A2 is relatively new. So this is what a data card looks like from MBT, which is considered one of the really realistic games. So not dumbed down, if you will. But I got to looking and comparing the data, and honestly, there's not a whole lot of difference between the systems, at least what's on the data card, even though it looks like a lot more. Alright, so first thing here on an old data card, if you will, it's got some movement information. Then it's, you know, so right over here is like, here's basic movement information for the vehicle. Then over here you've got some movement costs, so replicating some data from, say, data cards onto each individual card. So there's some complexity right there, movement. Then you have your firing information. It has the type of ammo you're using, so if it's like a, you know, armor piercing, heat, just different types of data you could fire. Heavy machine gun data, so you got your main gun, secondary weaponry, and the gunnery charts, and then what kind of damage that those weapons do. And then right down below is hit location, some armor charts, so, you know, defense for your vehicle. So, you know, it looks quite a bit, but as you play the game, it's actually real easy to read. It's some dice rolls, but what they've done is basically taken the charts from, say, the separate game cards and stuck some of that data right there on the game card. So now let's shoot forward a few years here. So folks have been used to playing this, which has a lot of data on it, and now we're going to go to something that's a little bit smaller. So this was a big concern that I saw from some folks. They're saying, oh my gosh, you've dumbed it down. There's not the movement data that it has in the same sense as what you're used to seeing. A lot of the data is there, but it's in this condensed format. Saves on printing, you can print more per page, however you want to do it. Actually, I think it works out a lot better. So like here is an example of some of the movement data. Okay, 5T, it's a tracked vehicle, so when it's moving cross country, track is its primary means, and basically if he's just traveling over open land, one square of movement, one hex of movement for track. Yeah, oh, there she goes. Now she says hi. Hi, Eagle. All right, and then if you're doing road, then it has the road movement costs, weight of the vehicle, just some very basic data, some weapon data, turret turn costs, rate of fire. So again, some of the data is still there. It's just been reformatted into something that's easier to read. And then some of the card chart data that would be similar from vehicle to vehicle is just left on the data cards. And there's data cards that each player will receive. So again, you can now kind of condense some of the cards that you receive. I mean, that's all it is. It's just condensed. We still have the primary weapons and the ammo type by the weapon. So here's the ammo, armor piercing, and here you have later on in the game with some advanced rules, there's a different type of armor piercing rounds. GP fire, this would reflect any backup weapons or how the primary weapon might be used in a say versus infantry role. So you still have the different weapon types, has the damage types, and a lot of what they've done is they've kind of cut stuff down from, say, on a scale of 1 to 100. Now it's on like a scale of 1 through 10. So it's just a little bit easier to manage. The complexity is still there, just easier to manage. You still have some defensive and hit charts down below. Again, it's just a little bit easier to manage. And then some of the charts that are included here, because they're universal, they've just left those on the player data cards. And we'll look at some of the information that we have from the player data cards. So it hasn't really been dumbed down all that much, but it has been streamlined is what I would say. Streamlined. Now, here are some sample data cards from the German forces. Now, like for example, this Jagdpanther, this is going to be from one of the expansions. There was a couple other vehicles from the expansions. So this you wouldn't necessarily see in the base game, but like a Tiger, that's going to be in the base game. Some of these the smaller Panzers will be in the base game. So I've got 4 examples here. Now the counters. Now I do have an example of what some of the counters could look like. Yeah, I don't want to zoom in too much. Now unfortunately, these are a little bit blurry because just my editing skills and how they translate from a small picture to a bigger picture, they're going to look a little blurry. But maybe this will give you a little sample of what you could get. Now the other thing too is I don't have specifically which ones are going to be final art. These are all still samples of what we're going to get. I have not seen anything that says final. I've seen this version up here where you've got dark borders and a light color background to like a solid color backgrounds. So again, we won't know until it finally releases. But the data has been fairly consistent on the counter. So they do have some information. First they have the side, so the Iron Cross for the German units. You have the name of the vehicle unit that you're looking at. You then have like what card it references, so like G2A, so you can find the counter, then look up the corresponding data card to have. You also have the movement costs reprinted. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk about refers to the base game, and I'll tell you what that means here in a moment. But here is your movement costs reprinted for like the base game. There's your 3 for track, 5 for road, 8 for 5 for off-road, 8 for road. So we'll talk a little bit about movement as well here. But these are kind of a sample of the counters, at least for the German side. And what should make a lot of people happy is the fact that they're top-down views. I know if you haven't, if you don't follow this, big I want to say controversy, but at least it's a big matter of preference if the counters are side views versus top views. So for those who are real happy with top-down views, here's your game. And I'll tell you, another big reason why I went with the game, or am supporting this one, is the fact that the base game, it primarily focuses on armor conflict, and I prefer armor quite a bit. I love the tanks. So top-down views, color counters, it looks good already. We also have a sampling of some of the Russian data cards. Again, the information is the same, just the vehicles, colors will be a little bit different, so you identify the side that they're on. So you have your weapon types, the damage that they do, defensive stats down below here, size of the vehicle, which makes a difference. The bigger the vehicle, easier to hit. Smaller vehicles, a little bit tougher. Average vehicle size though is a 0, and so when we do a little fire demo, we'll show you how the size of the vehicle plays into combat. So here's just a sampling of some of the Russian vehicles. Now there are more data cards out there. What I did for my demonstration, so I can kind of play the game and learn the rules, I only included data cards that I could find decent counters to match. I thought it looked weird that I was playing the game with T-34s, but I only had counters for T-28s, and so I kind of had to do a little more digging and find appropriate counters and match up with data cards. So I only have 3 Soviet vehicles and just a few German vehicles. Then here are some of the Russian counters, and these are the ones that I could find that matched up with a data card. And again, it's the same type of information. You got the name of the vehicle units, the data card where you can find the specific stats for it, and then for quick reference, the movement costs. So this T-28 is very, very slow. 2-track, it's terribly slow. Some other counters that they have, I will warn you, this looks like it's going to be a counter-intensive game, real heavy on the counters, and they're all informational. Here you have the 5 basic command counters. Everything that you want to do with your units is going to be based on one of these commands. If you want to set it up to fire during the fire phase, move during move phase, either fire or move, it's called a short halt. So basically it's moving and shooting. It's a shoot and scoot. Then you have no command, meaning you're just going to let them sit because they're out of range, whatever. And then you can set them up for overwatch so they can react to enemy movements and firings. So those are your 5 basic commands, and I'll go over how we can assign those commands and the importance of that. Then we have some damage counters. There are a lot more damage counters than what I have here. For the basic game, these are the 3 that it uses. As you start to go into more complex games, there's going to be suppression and track hits. But basically what you have for the basic game, brew up is an exploded vehicle with smoke coming out. Damaged means it's semi-functional, and knockout means it's knocked out of the game, but it's not smoldering and smoking and flaming. It's just been knocked out. So those would be your 3 basic damage counters. We also have spotting counters. In the game period, being able to see your opponent is super important. If you can't see them, you can't shoot at them. So they have here the spot counter. So if your enemy moves or shoots, it makes them a little bit easier to spot at a greater distance. So these spot counters will be used to indicate what that unit has done. Finally, there's basic objective counters. They're going to be double-sided. So who controls a part of a map? Scoring purposes, each scenario will dictate how many points an objective is worth. And here are some of the combat charts, and we will actually kind of run through a little bit of a sequence of play and look at these charts a little bit more. Specifically the sequence of play chart, which is going to be good once this is all cleaned up. It will specify what you can do in the basic game, what you can do in the advanced game, and then which of these steps in sequence of play refer to the optional rules. Then we have the AP hit chart. AP for, I always consider that's armor piercing. I use that for, when you talk about your tank combat. These AP hit chart and modifiers to hit. This right here is your meat and potatoes, But this is where the heart of the game comes in. When I shoot at somebody, this is going to let me know if I've hit that tank, and then from there I can look at my damage card and see how badly I've hit that tank. And then finally, this last chart, this is not part of the basic game, but because of the way the game is kind of a modular system, you can take parts of the advanced game and use them with your basic game. You can actually kind of customize your rules, and I'll show you what that means here in just a moment. So one chart that I've included for me to play with has been the advanced hit location chart. Now when you look back and you think about that MBT card that we looked at, this kind of information had been reprinted on those data cards. So again, those data cards didn't make the game any more complex. It just meant the data cards reprinted a lot of information that was already available. Here the data cards a little more streamlined. You just had to refer to your player aid to find the charts. So I have it here for me. Now let's talk a little bit about, say, that sample firing. That's a simple phase of combat. Now, real classic fight, if you will. Tiger tanks, a lot of times, let's say a tiger tank, you hear about that all the time. Tiger tanks versus T-34s. So what I'm going to do is grab me up a tiger tank, and let's put on 2 T-34s. Just saying. And we're going to come on out to our map. I'm going to put them, what I like about this map is it's not all flat. It does have some mountains and hills, blocks lines of sight, so you can kind of maneuver your forces, try to outflank. The game plays pretty quickly, so maneuvering is functional on here. So it's a good thing they've got some terrain. But for grins and giggles, let's say we're going to line up along this bottom section that's clear, just to demonstrate some of the basic rules. So I'm going to drag my tiger down, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so maybe we can see the action here, where right about there. Hopefully you can see that. Alright, and then I'm going to drag, say, tiger, or not a tiger, but another T-34 and a T-34. So here you've got classic squaring off against each other. Now because you're top down, facing is super important. Now they have to face a hex edge. So you can't have them facing on a diagonal, so they have to be facing a hex edge. So let me just rearrange them. Now fortunately with their firing arcs, just because it doesn't look like they're straight at each other, they will be in their forward arcs, and we'll talk about how that's important. Alright, so when you're going to start a typical turn, let's talk about a typical turn, and we'll do some shooting here. First thing that you do is, even before you determine initiative, is you and your opponent are going to take a look at your command counters, and you're going to assign orders to your units even before you roll initiative. So if I was, say, the German player, and maybe I had here, let's add a little something here to it. I'm going to put a counter down here on this hilltop. So let's say my objective with my lone tank is I want to take this hilltop owned by the Russian player. So I have to decide, let's say I have to get there in 2 turns. I have to make a decision as the German, do I want to, let's say maybe 4 turns. But I have to decide, do I want to sit here at a distance and plunk away at the 2 tanks, or do I want to be moving forward while firing to try and get them, or do I just want to try and run past them and make a mad dash for the objective? That's something I have to decide. And then I have to kind of think, well, what would he do to defend? Is he going to just stay there and fire at me? So maybe what I'll do is eventually turn my tank and just try to maybe come around and flank them. So lots of decisions that you have to do before you even know who's going first. That's crazy. They call that the fog of war. So you're just kind of looking at the map as it is, and you decide, chess-like, what's he doing, what should I do? So what I'll do, just for the demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and put on my German here a fire move. And then I'm going to say, just for fun, that my two Russian units, where's my Panzer map? they're also going to have fire orders. Now, in a solitary game, just me, I can put down these markers just to remind myself of what orders I've assigned. But when you're playing a game here in face-to-face, what you're going to do is you can flip that counter, and now your opponent doesn't know what you're going to do. So your commands are secret, not to be revealed until those specific phases of the game. So just to remind us exactly what phase we're on, what I'm doing right here, I guess the first phase I already skipped was the spotting phase. Spotting is when you're looking at the battlefield just trying to see your opponent. Now, the reason why I kind of don't worry about it is because it's really important when you actually go into firing. So I need to tighten up on my rules a little bit. But spotting is just to make sure if I can even see a tank in the first place. After a certain distance, like if they're in trees, I have to be within a certain distance hex-wise of them to even know that the tank is there. So me as a player, I can look down at the map and I can see, hey, here's all these vehicles, but my people in the game technically wouldn't know they were there because they're hidden in trees. So like if these Russian tanks were off in a tree somewhere, the German might not see them because of the spotting rules. Being in a tree, you have to be a lot closer in order to see something, but the Russian player can see further out from the trees, so he can lay ambushes. So if I wanted to fire, I'd have to make sure that they can see each other. But for what we're doing, I'm going to say that they're within spotting range. Your base spotting range before modifiers is 20 hexes in a 360-degree arc. So this, under normal circumstances, they're well within range. So I kind of skip spotting phase, but it's important. Trust me, you can't shoot at something. You can't issue fire orders if you have no targets. Now, if you anticipate people coming within range of you, that's what Overwatch would be. Then you could say, well, I think those tanks will come. I'll slap an Overwatch. But as long as I can physically see them and they can all see each other, it's safe to put these fire command markers. So now that you've issued commands to all your troops, we're going to take a quick peek at our play action. Now, this is going to be color-coded. I hope it retains some color coding. Your different actions will be based on the style of game you're playing. If you're playing a basic game, then all your commands are in black. The advanced game, you're going to have some colors in like this blue, and then optional rules are going to be in green, at least on this chart. Final game may be different coloring. Now, what I'm looking here is the command phase is place your command markers, which I've just done. I've issued all my commands. Then we do initiative. Initiative, real easy. When you're on your map, the game is going to come with two sets of percentile dice, so 2 die 10s. And the way they're read is I've got this set up to where the blue die is my 10s and the reds is my 1s. So for initiative, German player would roll his percentile, and he got an 85 in this example. The Russian player would have his own set of dice and he'd roll, and he got a 17. So the German player wins initiative. Here's what's important. Different steps of the turn, the player with initiative goes first or can go second. So if you're looking at your combat chart here, it says here that down in combat, which is coming up next, in direct fire phase, the direct fire step, first player would shoot first, then the second player. Overwatch step, first player would shoot first, second player shoots second. So as far as combat goes, if you have initiative, you shoot first. Then when it comes down to movement, the second player moves first. So you need to decide, do I want to shoot first or do I want to scoot first? The reason why that's important is because firing and movement are sequential. It's not simultaneous. So if I shoot first and shoot your vehicle and destroy it, it does not get to return fire. So it's very important that you win initiative and then decide, do I want to shoot or scoot first? So let's go back. German player, he won initiative. He wants to go ahead and shoot first. He wants to see if he can put some damage on these vehicles before they put the hurt on him. So he's made that decision. I'm going to shoot first. So coming back to my chart then, after we do initiative, air phase and some other stuff here, those are advanced game. We skip that, so we just come right down to the next basic game feature, which is combat phase, direct fire step number 1, which is the first player. So combat is actually still pretty simple, even though we've added these cards of data and percentile dice. It's still fairly easy. You still got to get combat modifiers. You still have to roll to see if you hit. So very simple. All I got to do is determine range. So we already know from our spot phase they see each other. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot at this tank here. Now I haven't gone over rules for line of sight, blocking hexes, things of that nature. This is just, they're just looking out across each other over an open plane. So 10 spaces is what he counts. So what I'm going to do is I have to reveal my fire order. Since I'm going to be firing, all my units that have a fire order, we would reveal them, indicating who's going to be firing. That way the defender could start thinking about, if he had Overwatch, he would know which units have fired so he could return Overwatch fire. But also this makes sure that you're being honest, because if you have told a unit's going to be firing, you need to reveal that. You can't keep those orders hidden. If you're going to fire, you need to tell you're firing. So here, I'm going to go ahead and shoot. Now this guy here, my defender, he doesn't reveal his counters yet because it's not his turn. So now that I reveal I'm firing, let's take a look at our combat chart. Combat chart here, AP hit chart, because I'm using anti-tank. I have to decide here, what are my bonuses to hit? Now on your AP chart, your baseline is a 0. And this row here of 0 is going to give me the percentile at range that I need to hit. So what I'm going to do is, to start figuring out my modifiers, is I'm going to take a look at my German data card. Now my Tiger, I have to look at my Tiger card, look at my range of 10, and I have to look based on the weapon I'm using, if that's like point blank range, short range, just determine the distance. So in the basic game, you only use this top line of data because you're just dealing with tanks, so the AP line. And I just look across here at the ranges. The way that they do the ranges here is from basically starting out 0 to 4 is going to put you in point blank. That's super close. Then from like 5, 6 up to 7 would be short range. And then basically from 8 to 13 is medium. So if I'm 10 hexes away, that's below the 13 but above a 7. So that puts me at medium range with my Tiger tank. So that's the first bit of data that I need. 1. So looking at my combat chart, I know that if I index my medium range with the 0, I have a 50% chance to hit. Now I have to look at any other modifiers I might have. Is the target moving? What kind of cover is the target in? Is the shooter damaged? Is the shooter moving? Is there any brew up smoke in the way? So you just have to look at your different modifiers and then apply those. Now fortunately your chart only goes to a -10 modifier, so if you happen to have all kinds of penalties like Overwatch adjust, which is -3, which by the way just means you do have a vehicle on Overwatch and he's firing outside of his forward arc. So anyway, if I added that plus a bunch of firing through brew up, which could be difficult too, because if you have a battlefield just littered with smoking wreck, every vehicle or hex that has brew up smoke in the way gives a -2 penalty cumulative. So if there was like 5 vehicles lined up that all were brew up, that's a -10 penalty right there, because you're shooting through a lot of smoke. You can't see very well. So fortunately your penalties stop at -10. Your bonuses, if you have any, stop at +5. Most of the time you're going to be on the penalty side. So right now, none of my vehicles are set to move. None of them are doing anything. Everybody is staying stationary. No cover. We're all sitting at a 0. So that's very much what standing toe-to-toe is all about. Except they're a little bit further than toe-to-toe. So I'm just going to look at my medium range, 0. I have a 50% chance to hit. So what I'll do is I'll roll my percentile. Blues is my 10s. So the Tiger fires and he rolls a 64. So that right there is a miss with the Tiger. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just take that counter. I'm going to just kind of move it off to the side. So he's fired. We're good. Now, if I had more vehicles, any other vehicle that I had marked with a fire command would issue the fire command, and I would just remove that marker. So I know who's already issued or completed their move. So he's fired. He's good. We'll just set that off to the side. Now, that, according to the chart, is the first player's fire. So it really actually goes a lot quicker than what I've explained. Once you've done it a couple times, it's really easy. You just count the hexes, look the range, apply your penalties, roll the dice. So these vehicles here for the T-34s, same thing. They're at 10 hexes. I look at a Russian data card for the T-34. 10 puts it exactly right at medium range. Now remember, the Tiger could go all the way up to 13. So what that tells me here is the T-34 main gun has a little lower velocity, a little bit slower, it's just not as strong. 76 millimeter versus like the 88 millimeter. So 10 is still medium range. Now my combat chart, because I just got done doing it, you start to kind of memorize where numbers are. Since there's no penalties right now, everybody's at medium, no modifiers, they need a 50%. So the Soviet player, knowing that, having looked at his chart, he is more than happy on his turn to reveal 2 firing orders. So he's going to roll his percentile. He's going to say this tank fires. And he rolls a 78 with the first tank. So that was a miss, so he'll just move that down. He's done firing. Second tank fires. And he rolls a 59. Well, there you go. Firing is done. That's simple. Now, if I had had another vehicle, say up on the hill, that had Overwatch, well, by looking at my combat chart, after the second player has declared his firing and completed firing, direct fire, any vehicles on Overwatch would then go. So if the first player had a vehicle on Overwatch, he could then return fire at an enemy vehicle that fired. So you're still limited on who you can fire at and when, but it does give you a chance to shoot back right away. And then finally, once first player has resolved his Overwatch, the second player would do his Overwatch. We had no Overwatch. So then the next phase would be to move on to movement. I had nobody set for movement, so we'll come back to that in just a moment. So after you do movement, that's it. I mean, that's really easy in the basic game. You've got vehicles, they maneuver, they get within range, you fire, you either hit or miss. If you hit, we'll do a hit here example in a moment, and we'll do movement here in a moment. Since I have no movement, we would go right into what's called the adjustment phase. Now the adjustment phase is just cleaning up the board. Now on here, if you look at my sequence of play chart, I gotta zoom way in. I'll do another zoom in, so maybe it'd be easier for everybody to read the different charts here. But right here it says there's a pivot step in black, and black for this chart normally meant basic. That's a little bit of misprint. Hard to say they've misprinted on a sample card, but this is not actually part of the basic game. This is referring to like guns and infantry. That's an advanced game. But really, for the adjustment phase in basic game, all you need to do is remove markers that weren't used, such as Overwatch, no command markers, and then in the turn step, which is something I don't have. I don't have a turn marker or turn track or anything of that nature. I didn't find one to scan or to put in. So basically for me, when I play, it just simply means removing any unused commands from that particular step. So here's a close-up of what your sequence of play is going to look like. So hopefully you can see a little bit better. But there's spotting, your command phase, place your command markers, determine initiative, skip air, go right into combat, your direct fire Overwatch, movement if any, and then wrap up the turn. So even though if you've looked at the rules and you saw 80 pages of rules and you said, oh my goodness, are you serious? If you do just the basic game, that's all there is to it. And that is actually a very good thing. The basic game is just that. Just a basic set of combat rules. So here's the AP chart that we were looking at. Let's see here, a little easier. A little blurry, I apologize. But right here is your grid, so based on the distance to target. Now this is very similar to the other game, MBT, that we saw. What they did was, instead of labeling it as point blank and short range, medium, they just had it by range altogether. So it simply said, for that vehicle, 0 to 10 and so on and so forth. The charts are there. These just make it a little bit easier to read. So you would just find your distance and cross-reference with where your penalty or bonus is to get your percentile numbers. So I'm hoping you can see that a little bit here. And then right over here you've got your modifiers to hit, target size, and I know I'm looking, those are a little bit blurry. Or a lot. They're blurry for me, they're probably really blurry for you. And then finally, this is again in the advanced game, but I'm stealing it and I'm including it in my base game. I'll show you why here in a minute, but this will give you an idea of where exactly you hit your vehicle that you're targeting at. We didn't have any hits, so we're going to move on to the next turn. So what I have to decide now is how exactly am I going to continue on the fight. I can stay here and slug it out, but I'm running out of turns and I need to take this hill. I'm going to actually bring my tiger in closer so it's easier for me to hit my targets. So I actually have a command that will help that. Now what I could do is choose move, which means I'm going to move all out and attempt to, maybe flank, get around my opponent and get up onto the hill. I have this one here, which is a short halt, which is like a shoot and scoot. I can fire and move, but I have penalties. I don't want to do Overwatch because I see the enemy, I kind of have an idea what they're doing. So with my tiger, I'm going to do a short halt. So what I'm going to do is, as the commander, I'm going to bring that down here, flip it over, keep it hidden from my opponent so they don't know what I'm doing yet. Now I'm going to look at the Russians here, and they're going to go ahead and maintain firing because they see the tiger's coming, they want to shoot it. So I didn't redo spotting because one thing that's nice about some of the rules is if it makes sense, you don't have to redo it. There's no reason for me to have to redo spotting because nothing on the field has changed. They're still there, so they haven't really done anything yet. Now I'll show you what spotting would do for me in a moment here. So now we're going to look at the combat card. Let's see if I can zoom that again. Zoom it so you can see what I'm talking about here. Spotting phase we would check. I've issued my commands. Now we're going to do initiative. I'm going to stay right here on this board to do initiative. So the German player rolls and gets a 46. Not the best. Now the Russian player goes. He gets a 49. So this time the Russian player goes. Well, the Russian player wants to shoot that tiger down. So he's going to go first, he says. That way he can do his direct fire first. Now, what we can do then is come down to the combat phase. There's direct fire, Overwatch. So now if we were playing where I had units kind of scattered throughout, or possibly these Russian tanks were in woods, when they reveal their orders to fire, one other counter is going to be needed here in just a moment, just so I have it on hand for an example. We're going to keep these spotted counters on the board. Now in this basic game, because I'm just doing a couple units, I probably wouldn't worry about spotting ever, but if I did have more units that were out and about, if they were hiding in trees, it would be important. So I'm going to show you how you would use these spotting counters in just a moment. So since I've got the initiative, this guy is going to go ahead and fire first. I'm going to look at this T-34. Their range is still 10. Their range is still 10. They haven't moved. And I'm looking on that medium chart. So I'm going to come back to my combat chart. I have to zoom this out here. Alright, so I'm going to zoom in. Maybe I moved it a little too much. And now I'm going to look for my different penalties. Is saying, is the target moving? What kind of cover are they in? Am I moving? Well, let's look. Once I've identified my target and I'm going to shoot, one thing is I would have to let my opponent know, well, I'm moving. So that means you get to apply a -2 penalty. Oh, I'm just messing with my counters here. Let me clean that up more pretty like. Okay, I think I was here. So I would have to let them know, well, you're going to have a -2 penalty because I have a move order. And then I can just flip that back. Now there is a rule that if you don't want your opponent to know that you're moving or what you're doing, you can just tell them that you're keeping your command secret, and then whatever penalty this was, would, instead of giving them the -2 penalty because I'm moving, they get a 0. So let me show you what that means. That means instead of saying that my opponent will roll on the -2 column and then he would have a 40% chance to hit, I could say, oh, I don't want to reveal that movement counter to you, so that's going to actually give a penalty of 0, which bumps this back up, so your opponent would get to roll a 50% versus 40 if you're trying to keep your order secret. So that's the penalty of keeping your order secret, is you're easier to hit, but now your opponent doesn't know if you're doing a short halt or a full move to try and flank. So you have to decide, do I risk getting hit, or do I keep my orders, secret, or reveal them and be harder to hit? I'm going to say that in my base game, the German says, no problem, I want you to know that I'm moving, so you're going to take a -2 penalty to hit. So we just look at the combat chart, we look at the -2 column. Let me scooch over a little bit. So he says, look at the -2, look at medium range, you need a 40% to hit me. Since I got 2 people targeting me, I want that to be harder. So the German or the Russian rolls this first set of dice. He misses. He's not doing so good. So he comes back, he removes that fire chit, so he knows that he's already fired. Now, if spotting was going to be important, what I would then do is take one of these spotting chips. And let's take a look at one of these chips. I'm going to zoom in here. Some of your counters that you're going to get in the game have multiple pieces of data on them, such as this says move on one side of the counter, and when you rotate it, it says fire on the other side of the counter. For example, on this one that the German has, one side of the short halt says fire, one side says move. What you do is you place the specific commands you want to do. It's going to be towards the front of the vehicle. Now, because this guy hasn't really done anything yet, let me reorganize that. I know he's going to fire, so I'm going to leave the fire side here first because that's the command he wants. So he's going to have that towards the front of the vehicle. That way everybody knows he's on the fire order first. So we'll just flip that back around. Now, because this Russian vehicle just fired, he's going to have a fire marker put on him for spotting purposes. Now the reason why that would come into play is, let's say I had him in woods, and let's say you had to be 7 hexes away to see him. Well, if he fires his weapon, then there's actually a spotting chart that I don't have. But you would then go, oh, but you fired, you're actually going to be easier to spot. I can see you from further hexes away. So that's why spotting can be important. And in certain scenarios, you're going to have to mark your vehicles with either that they have fired or that they've moved in order to make them easier to spot. Alright, so now we're going to look at the second Russian vehicle. 10 hexes away, and he is marked to fire. So we know that this vehicle, I'll just leave it on the short halt. So we know that he's actually a vehicle that is moving. We go back to the combat chart and we just confirm -2 at medium range is a 40%. So now the Russian fires. Now again, I'm taking a lot of time explaining as we go, but if you don't have to explain and you and your opponent just kind of play and look stuff up, it does go rather quickly. So now he has fired, he's expended his rounds. I'm going to go ahead and give him a fire marker as well, so we know that he has fired. So he would be easier to spot. I won't use those markers again. That's just to demonstrate why they have those spotting markers, they're called. So they've fired. They're easier to spot if they fire. So now, my turn, the German side of the direct fire. He's going to look at his combat chart and apply his penalties. So a range of 10 for him was also medium. Just remembering that from my data chart. Now I have to look, right here it says short halt. Your vehicle gets a -4 column that he has to roll on. I have no other penalties. However, if you have a stabilizer, you get a bonus. Now here's one other thing I did not do, because I'm just kind of easing you into this. Let's take a look at the Russian data card, because they are now the target. I'm going to zoom in on the Russian T-34 here, for example. Here's some of the information that we have. One thing that you need to look is the size of the vehicle. That's either going to be easier to hit, or a smaller vehicle will be harder to hit. T-34 is normal sized. there are no penalties or bonuses to hitting it. Whereas if you look over here at let me move it over here. Whereas if you look at this, the T-28, it actually has a size of +1. That's like a little land battleship here. So it's easier to hit. So just keep that in mind. Some of your vehicles are easier or harder to hit. Now we're going to look here at my German, because that's what we're using here, the Tiger. Zoom in a little bit better here on its card. One thing you can look at is this here, SB, stabilization. Now, these vehicles really didn't have very fancy stabilization like some of the modern day tanks, so these are almost all 0. Oh hey, Cynic has joined. How's it going, Cynic? So there's no bonuses to hit here at all. So I'm pretty much looking at my combat chart. He's stuck at -4. So I gotta look at my -4 column. 30% chance to hit. So I'm gonna say I was shooting at the bottom tank. I roll my dice. I still have yet to hit anything. So I rolled a 37. I hit nothing. So what we're going to do is come back to our map. If if I had pulled out more of these spotting, I would have to put on this guy that he is spotted for firing. In fact, let's just do that so you can see. Pretty soon these informational markers are going to be cluttering your map up with all kinds of information. So he fired, so he's easier to see. His command is this fire. So that right there, according to the combat chart, let's move it over here, zoom in. We're done. If we had any Overwatch, we would conduct that. So movement is next. I've only got one vehicle moving, and that's the German tank here, marked to move. So let's talk a little bit about move. I'm going to move this spot marker off for just a minute. And now because he's moving, I'm going to move his chit to the move side. So if I had multiple vehicles that were all on short halt, I would know which ones had moved and which ones had finished firing. So I'm moving him. Let's talk about movement. I'm going to zoom in on him for just a moment. So replicating the data from the data card, this 3T means that he's a tracked vehicle, and this 5.8, this is in the basic game. 5 is his off-road speed, like trails, and then 8 is his road speed, so improved roads. So cross country, which is what this would all be considered, he gets to move 3 hexes, modified by other things, by terrain and whatnot. So really, Tigers are not very fast. I don't remember exactly where he was, so I'm just going to pretend he was here. So I know that I want to move closer. So here's the neat thing about their movement. Turning a hex side, one hex side, is free. And you can turn before you move into a hex or after you move to the hex. So your vehicles are very fluid with turning. So I could say I'm going to move forward 1. I could then turn 1 if I wanted, and then flip right around and turn and go in here and then turn if I needed to. So your vehicles are pretty agile that way. But he can only move 3, so he's kind of slow. So I'm going to put this back here to remind me that he has moved, and then I would put the spotting counter for move because he just got done moving. Moving is not as detrimental as firing. So from a distance, it's easier to see a unit that's fired than a unit that's moved. That's a turn right there. I go back to my combat charts. After movement, we're going to adjust any markers that need to come off and end our turn. So fortunately, this is very easy. I don't have to worry about invalid orders. Like for example, if I had on here a command to fire, but I never revealed it and the unit never shot, then you get a little slap on the wrist, but you just take that fire order off. Well, I can go ahead and clean up. I'm going to take these various spot tokens off because we're done with that. Actually, I think as you progress, you probably could leave these on. The rules as they are right now didn't make it entirely clear to me if I would leave these on. if they carry over from turn to turn. I think they do, because one of the rules says, like, if you have a vehicle marked to fire and it didn't fire, you put one of those spot markers on. And I think that that would carry over to the next turn, so he would be easier to see on the next turn. So they fired. I'll just leave those there for aesthetics. It's cool seeing all those markers. But anyway, we would just remove any orders. There are some you could take off, like your Overwatch you would take off if it wasn't used. So you can clean up a little bit. Alright, so now we're on the next turn. You issue orders. Since we are a little bit closer, I'm going to go ahead and change this up a little bit. I'm going to take the short halt off and issue him a fire. Now remember, all these would be secret initially. So in a solitary game, you probably don't need to do all of the hidden. Oops. Come back here, tank. You probably don't need to go about hiding your markers, because it's you need to know what's going on. But with an opponent, you want to make sure they're hidden first. Spotting, and this is why I think that those markers would stay on, because it's the spotting phase next. But because, remember, my units are wide out in the open, there's really absolutely no reason for me to conduct spotting. Only if there were other units involved might that be important. So I'm just going to leave the spotting markers off to the side. I just wanted to show you how cool the double-sided markers are. Alright, so then combat chart. And because it's pretty easy, I mean, once you've done play a couple of times, you have an idea of the order things happen. Spotting is first, then you roll initiative, then you conduct combat, then you conduct movement, and then you wrap up. It's that quick. So we're going to roll initiative. German player rolls a 14. He's probably not going to go. Russian player rolls a 54. He's going to go. Alright, so after initiative, then it comes direct fire step. Player who wants initiative, if he wants, he can decide to go second if he wants. He might want to move first, but he's going to go ahead and fire first. So he reveals all units that are going to take part in firing, and they are valid because they have spotting. Now we're going to count the distance because my tiger has moved. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Clear line of sight. They're now range 6. That is different. So I'm going to look at my data card for a T-34 just real quick. Data card says a range of 6 is now short range for a T-34. Now we're going to get dangerous. We have gotten in range. I'm going to look at my combat charts. Now we're back to a situation where nobody's moving. Everybody now is just looking at each other, straight up shooting. So I'm going to look at my chart, go short range, no penalties, a 70% chance to hit at short range. Roll my percentile dice and check it out. I rolled a 16. That's a hit. Now, this is where the fun part comes in. That's why I love this game. It's not so much that I hit and now I just draw a little chit that tells me how much damage I did. I have to see if my gun actually penetrates the armor. Here's where the fun part comes in. My wife's playing bingo. She got 3 bingos. Alright, so here's where the fun begins. This also is a quick step once you've done it a few times for the basic game. I'll show you how I bump it up for myself when I play. Alright, so the first thing I got to do is look at my short range on the T-34. I cross-index that with the type of ammo I'm using, and I get the number 16 right here. That tells me it has a penetration factor of 16 at short range versus armor. Now, as the German player, I would have my data card, and I would say, well, did you hit the front of my vehicle or the rear? In the basic game, that's real easy to determine. What you're going to do is, I'm going to move this off to the side. When I'm looking at my vehicle, basically, you have a front and a rear side. If you were to dissect your vehicle in half, like what I've done right here, this forward hex, these 3 forward hexes are the front. These 3 on the back are the rear. So quite simply, this Russian fired, he hit one of my front arc. That's all it is in the basic game. So again, real simple, keeps the game moving fast. Let me put my command marker back. Come here, command marker, matchup. Alright, so I'm going to look at my German defense data card. When you hit the front, the basic game, you get to bypass all these lovely charts. You come right down here to the notes. Let's zoom in a little bit more. It says armor, 2116. The first number is your front armor. The second number is the rear armor, regardless of if it's the hull or the turret. So with an armor of 21, that T-34 doesn't penetrate. So it hit, but it doesn't penetrate the armor. Uh-oh. That's bad news. So now you can see why, if I'm looking at the map, when you're talking about historical battles, that's why these guys, the T-34s, tended not to go head-to-head with Tigers. That's why you might have a couple here guarding the objective, but you're going to have a bunch of people try to come around and flank from the rear because they have much weaker armor on the back side of the tanks. So now you know why frontal assaults didn't really happen all that much. Go for the flanking shots. Alright, so he's fired. He's good. I'd mark him with spotting if needed. This guy, I could say he would fire, but we just looked at the chart. Even if he hits at this range, a 16 penetration versus 21 armor, he's not going to hurt that Tiger. Now the Tiger, he needs a 70% also to hit. Because if I go back to my comp, well, let's take a look. What did I say it was? 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 away. Let's take a look at my data card. 6 away on a Tiger, okay, that's short range. Greater than 4, less than 7, it's still short range. Combat chart, when I have no modifiers, they're just sitting at each other. Short range, 70%. Alright, so we had that from earlier. I'm going to roll. And now the Tiger hit. So now we're going to see what that 88 cannon can do. So I look at my German data card. I look at my short range. I look at my AP ammo on the 88. It has an armor penetration factor of 24. That's good. So then the Russian player goes, uh-oh. He looks at his T-34 data card, and when you look at the notes, he has an armor of 18. That means not only did the Tiger hit, but his shot penetrated the front armor of the T-34. That 88 gun is amazingly powerful. So what kind of damage did we do? So this is the next important thing, and this is in the basic game. I get to decide here what kind of damage I did. Now, the German player, because he knows that he had a penetration of 24 and the armor of 18, that's a difference of 6. So the German player, he's looking at his data card and he's looking at the damage for that weapon. He's going to find which column here he did. 2 through 3 would be a damage, 4 through 7 is a knockout, and a difference between 8 and 10 or more, if it came to that, is a brew up, meaning that vehicle exploded. So since there was a difference between 24 and 18 is a difference of 6, I knocked out that T-34. Knocked out. So it's not smoking, but it can't be used anymore. So I would come down here to my map. Well, first of all, let me get a damage counter. I'm going to grab this KO, come down here to the map, and write a big fat KO right there. Pa-ping! It's been knocked out. Now, what they also want you to do, though, just for grins, is remove that vehicle and leave the knockout. So you have some wreckage here now in that hex. Doesn't matter what kind of tank it was, it's blowed up. Forgot to reveal my fire command. So he fired and he's good. Now, play would repeat. It goes quick, so I would have to then clean up. He fired, he's good. I don't have any spotting to do. I've got one tank left. We would then have to go to the spotting phase. Well, they see each other still. Nobody's run. Then we have to issue commands. Who's going to fire? Who's going to move? Direct fire. Determine damage. Who's left? It's that easy. My wife got 4 bingos. Nice. Alright, so that right there is the very basics of the game. Now, this, like I said, was very unfair. Very unfair as the Tigers really outclass in a head-to-head. Now, if you were to compare movements, let's just take a look. So this is where your strategical planning based on your scenario is going to come in. Let's zoom in on these two counters for just a moment. Let's come in. So what's going to be really, really good here for the Russian player is using his numbers. My counter sizes are off. Remember, I did this from scratch, so be gentle. What we're going to do is look at the strength, though, of the T-34. Its strength lies in its movement ability. Right here on the basic game stats, 3T, 3 unhindered off-road hexes for a Tiger, 5 for a T-34. With the fact that you can rotate one free hex side without spending a movement point, he's got big maneuverability. He can turn, come up, turn, go a couple. I'm ignoring the hill. This is a hill. There's movement for hill. But I'm just saying, if this was all flat, I mean, this guy could eventually come around to try and flank the Tiger, while this tank here is firing pot shots at the Tiger to hold his attention. Now, obviously, the player would see the Tiger coming, and again would have to anticipate, how do I handle this threat? This is going to be important because, remember, your Tiger's armor on the rear is a lot less than his armor on the front. Let's look at a data card real quick. On that Tiger, he's got 21 armor up front, 16 on the back. Remember, armor penetration of the T-34 at short range, 16. So those T-34s get in close enough and hit the flanks, they're going to penetrate, they're going to damage that Tiger. So, well, actually 16 to 16 is the difference of 0. That still doesn't penetrate. They're going to have to get to point blank. They're going to have to get really, really close to the Tigers to pop them in the backside to do damage. So there's where your strategy comes in. So when you're looking at the base game, even though you're just doing simple tank tactics, you still have to think, how do I position and maneuver my troops on a map that's got hills and things that I can hide in? That's why spotting is important. I can hide in the trees and force my opponent to come closer. That's defense right there. And then I get to fire from the trees and I'm safe. So Miller Light's here. Miller Light, he's asking, what game is this? This is an upcoming game called Panzers by GMT. And what I've done is I've kind of finagled together my own little playboard. This is my own private creation to demonstrate the game because it hasn't been released yet. I'm like looking into the future and speculating on how some of the basic gameplay works. I'm excited. Yeah, just go with it. So, strategy. Now, let's talk about advanced combat just a little bit. Now, there's quite a bit in the advanced rules, and I took one set of rules away from the advanced game, and I'm going to leave you with this. I like having all these bits of numbers and data to work with. Now, I've looked at a couple different data cards and some other informational sheets, and I don't know exactly what the final layout's going to be, but I like this side over here. You have front sides and rear sides, which breaks down to like turret front, turret side, turret rear, whole front, whole side, whole rear. Plus, as you get going in your advanced game, oh, Miller Lite, this is awesome. Keep watching. And then watch from the very beginning, and you're going to love this game. Oh, it's phenomenal. You also have to take into consideration in your advanced game, is this a level shot? Is it a rising shot? Am I shooting them from underneath? Or is it a falling shot? Do I have advantage and I'm firing down on the top armor, which is also weaker? So, lots to consider when you're shooting it, folks. Love it. But now that I've got these charts here, how would I know exactly, am I hitting the turret or am I hitting the hull? So let's take a look at that. I have a chart for that. First, I'm going to have to look here. Let's zoom in on the action. So we've got a Tiger here facing off against a couple T-34s that have gotten within point blank range. So they're coming in for the kill. And they're facing valid hex sides. So let's see, how would I determine What am I shooting? So first of all, I'm going to draw a line from the center to the center here. Now this is really easy. Oh, I'm not legally facing. Okay, so from here to here, when you are faced with a split on hexes like this, where my shot is either coming in from this hex side or this hex side, the defending player gets to decide, what am I hitting? This here is a side. This would be a rear side. This is a front side. This is front. Another front side. This is a rear side, and this is the rear. So I'd have to look at my armor card, and I would probably say a rear side shot is actually a little bit stronger than dead on to the rear. Because remember, vehicles back then, they placed their armor more up front than in the back, just to help balance out weight. So I'm pretty good against this T-34 up front, but this one that snuck behind, he's going to get a rear shot. Now I have to decide, is it going to be against the turret or the hull? So this is what I stole from the advanced game. I have, right over here, a hit location chart. And what I would do is I could roll a die 10, and based on if it's a front side, rear side, or rear, I just roll a dice, and it's going to tell me if it's the turret rear or hull rear, or, which I didn't include a counter for, the tracks, that I actually shoot down in the tracks, and now the tank's immobile. Still shoots, it's just immobile. So I'm going to roll a die 10. Now that tank is hitting the whole side is what I've determined. So I'm going to look over here, well, the side at least. So what I do is, right here, rear side, I look at my 9, I look at the rear side because I'm hitting the rear side. I look for 1 through 2, nope, 3 through 4, nope, 6 through 7, nope, 8 through 9, nope. Right here, 9. It says whole rear with an exclamation mark. So I already know I hit the whole, but this exclamation mark says if you are in a partial hold down or all hold down or track hits, means it's a miss. Okay, so what does that mean real quick? In the advanced game, I'm not using that rule, but if you're using the advanced rules, hold down means your tank is going to hide in like a ditch and leave only the turret exposed. It's a defensive technique. So if I'm hold down and I roll a whole hit location there with the asterisk, that means the shot hit the ground and not my vehicle. So I'm still protected. But since my vehicle is out in the open, I rolled a whole hit, even with the asterisk, means he got hit in the hole. So let me look at my German data card. So from the back side, my whole armor rear, right here, whole side is what I did there. Sorry, not directly the rear, but the side, is 19. Looks like it's the same even from the rear. So it's a 19. Whereas if I was hitting the turret from the rear, I guess that's still a 19. But if you notice on the whole armor on the front is a 24, whereas the turret is a 26 on the front. So you get to use your advanced charts, and it will matter. Different vehicles are going to have different armor amounts throughout the turret and the hull. So it adds just a little bit more realism, but it only adds a couple seconds of chart looking up. And now you have a much more detailed example of what exactly happened to your vehicle. Miller Light says, so is this just something you made to show how the game will work? Yep, this is something I made to show how the real game is going to work. I know, that's awesome, right? So unfortunately I can't share it with anybody. Like if someone actually said, hey, can you send me a copy of that data file? I can't. Not that anybody's asking, but if they did, I can't send it out because I don't have permission to send it out, and because it's not final game work or anything like that. This is all speculation on how it's going to look. So these charts are just things that I found off the internet. The map I found off the internet. So this is all stuff that was put out by GMT or various websites. So none of the artwork is mine. I just found it, manipulated it so I could stick it onto my game board. I know, it's so cool. But this gives me a chance to play with the rules and understand a little bit what's going on, and hopefully encourage folks to say, you know what, man, board gaming is actually kind of cool, especially war games. So this is Panzers that we're doing, so I'm hoping that's intrigued you a little bit. It's coming out right now in July. That's the last I've heard. Sometime in July it will come out. I placed my pre-order, so hopefully in July this thing ships. But that right there is a quick rundown of the basic rules. Some things we did not cover for the basic rules is we didn't cover line of sight as far as like hills. But if you've played a lot of board games, war games, just know that a hill, if I got one unit on this side of the hill and my enemy on this side of the hill, they can't see each other. If I'm on this side of trees and he's on that side of trees, we're not seeing each other. Line of sight. Now, one thing I will say that's kind of cool is what they have done is they have an advanced system set up. I don't know how, but if this T-34 can see this Tiger tank, he will know about it. Everybody on the Russian side will know that the Tiger tank is here. And as long as somebody can maintain visual on the Tiger tank, we all know it's there. We might not be able to shoot at it because there's stuff in the way, but at least technically they would know it's there. And that's important for things like spotting. If I had artillery, I don't, but if I had artillery, then I could shoot mortars and infantry teams and things like that at the Tiger as long as somebody maintains visual. Now, if I lost visual, so right now nobody has a direct line of sight to the Tiger tank, then none of my stuff requiring line of sight could shoot at it. So even though I know it's on the board, I still have to respect the fact that I can't see through mountains. Yeah, Miller Lite says board gaming is cool. It is, and I'm slowly learning that and getting into it, and especially wargaming. Loved it growing up. Played a little bit as a younger adult, but now that I'm able to kind of get back into it, finding out I've jumped in at a really good time. And Panzers is a great example of a game being released this year. That's one reason I'm really excited about it. Is this is the first box of the new series coming out this year. So I'm not joining a game that's been out for several years and has a strong following. I'm joining something right now at the beginning. So I really recommend GMT. Check out Panzers. Place your order. It'll be coming out pretty soon. You won't get the pre-order price. You'll have to pay full price. So if it, check it out. Read the rules. Let's talk about the rules real quick here as I start to wrap up. The rules. The book that they have for you to look at is a draft copy of the rules. It is like 80 pages long. Fortunately, that's broken down into 3 sections. 1, 2, 3. First, you have the basic rules. That's about 20 pages. That covers your line of sight, spotting rules, direct combat, movement, very basic stuff. Then you go into the advanced rules, and it really starts to add a lot of cool stuff. Your infantry, aircraft, bombs, artillery, minefields, engineers. It really ups the complexity. Even just in the combat, it then lets you use those bigger hit charts. Then you have optional rules, which add very specific rules to really add complexity to your game. And what's nice is, think of it, it's all modular. If you want to play just the basic rules always, then that option is there for you. And then slowly you could introduce 1 or 2 advanced rules. Like I'll add infantry, but not artillery. So just take and add as you want. Very nice system. Miller Lite says, yeah, I prefer getting into games as they start, especially MMOs. Gives me a chance to get on top. I know, normally I do MMOs a lot, and I love getting in at the beginning. And I love speculating games that are about to release and beta testing. So for me, kind of putting my own game board together here, this is my way to kind of beta test a product that hasn't quite come out yet. So I get to push the markers around, I get to roll my dice, I get to blow up tanks. Life could not be much better than that. So give it a check. So I'll leave it at that. Well, Miller Lite, you come a little late though, but he says, yeah, that's the way to do it. Yeah, I know, and the nice way to really end up a nice playthrough like that. And I'm hoping that anybody who watches this, you got questions, you want to see some advanced play or some more examples of tank combat. What I'm going to do, since all I did was really just showed a couple vehicles kind of facing off, probably the next video I do for Panzers will have a couple more examples. I'll put maybe some Overwatch and have more than just 3 vehicles out here. So we'll do a little bit more next time. But that just want to show some of the basic rules. But if you want to see something specific or have questions about rules, post it. I'm hoping that Mr. James M. Day will look at this and maybe clarify things or have some input. He might even tell me to take it down. I hope not. But I'm hoping this will spark some interest in his game. It's awesome. Also, he's got some other games out. Look at the older games he wrote. The old MBT, IDF, Israeli Defense Force. He's got a lot of really good, interesting stuff out there. And that's one reason I wanted to put this out, was just kind of promote it. So check it out. It's great. Yeah, Miller Lite's laughing. Yeah, I know. I hope we get to keep it posted. So anyway, that's all I got for tonight. So you should have come a little bit earlier. But do you got any questions before I go, Miller Lite? While I drink my Brand X cocoa. It says, what time do you start streaming? I start my streamings at 10:30 Central Time, so I have no idea how that translates to where you're at, but 10:30 Central is about when I start. So if you ever want to participate live, or one day when we can actually do gaming, I can set it up to where I can actually play people. So instead of joining me in an MMO, I might actually get to do a board game battle with somebody. Keep that in mind. So 10:30 Central if you want to participate in the live show. Probably about 8 p.m. your time. So you're probably sounds like Pacific Coast-ish. So 8:30 Pacific time then. Yeah, I want to do some more. He says, nice live stream board games. Yeah, I want to live stream some. There's different game boards people have. There's Zunsu and then Vassal. Both are really, really good. I've only figured out how to program a game in Zunsu, and so one thing I want to do is I'm going to start putting some more games up to demonstrate. So yeah, board gaming. Why not? It's cool. It's hip. So, all right. I'm going to go ahead and take off so people don't get too bored of watching a really long video when we're done. So, have a good night. We'll catch you. Remember, weeknights, if you're interested in other video gaming, come check me out. Weeknights, 10:30 p.m. Central Time. Have a good one. Milla, take care. Eagle Claw, Cynic, good night, everybody. Let me come over here and hit the big red shiny button. So in take terms, it'd be, fire, send.